Good morning, everybody. We are back live here on the RAS Picks YouTube channel. It is Mock Draft Wednesday. One of my favorite golf creators is Matt Blois over at Golf Liberty, and he did a video yesterday on strong lofted versus traditional lofted irons. And he opened the video by saying, I don't love when there's a lot of content ideas being thrown at me telling me what to do, but every now and then you got to budge because the audience wants what they want and you got to deliver. And so yesterday during the live stream, a lot of comments when you doing the mock. There were some that wanted a 7-round mock draft. I'm not doing 7. I'm going to do 1. And I want to preface this with anybody who is joining that is not familiar with the work that I do, that might not be from the sports betting side of things. I just want to get it out there. And this is not a hedge against how terribly wrong some of the picks might go or how wildly inaccurate this might look 48 hours from now when we're looking back on Friday. I am not a draft insider. I am not somebody who works for NFL networks with intel. Everything that is going to be said in this episode is based off of multiple weeks of reading, compiling, listening, watching different GMs, coaches, team reporters say what they think is going to happen. I'm going to be making these picks based on what I believe is the most believable story for each of these teams. And so this is not going to be anything that should be looked at as like insider intel that can be used. This is all strictly from the handicapping and the betting side, trying to put together 32 in hopes that people are looking at this and maybe you get a different thought process on some of these teams, or you hear something you may have not heard elsewhere, and you're just getting to perhaps a conclusion that makes you think one way or the other. Maybe it leads to bets. Maybe it leads to longer shot flyers on things and stuff like that. But this is going to be fun. It's going to be enjoyable. And we're going to go through team by team in the first round only. You're not getting 7 rounds. That's a bit extensive, as we will go through each and every one of these. Ryan Roberts is always along for the live streams offering support, says betting perspective mock will give good insight based on all the media we see all the time. I don't swear on the podcast. I know it's not on the 10 out of 10 side, but hey, we're keeping it family friendly as we have for the last 7 years. Might be kids watching. YouTube asks every single time. Maybe they've got the videos flagged as a widespread audience tuning into the videos. We'll see what happens with that. But all right, before we jump in, Bet 105, minus 105 sides and totals. There's a link below in the description. I saw there were a lot of clicks to the link yesterday between the video, between the newsletter. People are curious because you're probably tired of laying minus 110, minus 115, paying extra vig and extra juice for the playoffs. It makes no sense to do so in the NBA or NHL playoffs. It's only a few games, very intense market. Give yourself at least some chance to have a chance of breaking even or perhaps even winning. Lay minus 105 sides and totals at Bet 105 on the NBA and the NHL playoffs. If you're betting MLB, well, they've got money line spreads a little bit less than 3%. The best and lowest that you are going to find anywhere. It is a reduced juice book. And the best part is they don't limit or ban or kick out winners. So if you are successful and you are winning and you want to get down good amounts, well, Bet 105 is going to welcome that action. Available anywhere in the United States. Bet 105. The link in the description will take you over and give you all the details that you need to know. And if you haven't yet, footballbettors.com sent out one yesterday looking at picks inside the top 10 with different intel, different breakdowns, different perspectives, odds, updates. There's going to be a recap of everything we've talked about today in this video, but also there's probably going to be 1 or 2 more coming out. We had Todd McShay send out his mock this morning. We also had Peter Schrager post his mock. Ari posted his as well. Daniel Jeremiah is later today on the NFL Network Live, pick by pick. So there'll be an update on everything going on later. Have a few thoughts on maybe a specific team or two as well. So if you haven't signed up yet, free email newsletter, footballbettors.com. Here we go. Mock Draft Wednesday. Getting into it. Keeping it light, keeping it steady. We'll try to go about a minute per pick to keep this show in the 45-minute range. Starting draft over at PFF. Let's see if I can do this without mismanaging any of the tech. There's so many live streams that are able to do this and do it flawlessly. I am trying to do my best to keep up with all of those guys as well. Pick number 1. Easy one to start. And by the way, let me know in the comments, what's the goal here? 7 out of 32 player to team matches? Where does that rank? In my head, before I hit live, I think I've got the top 4, as does almost everybody else. Like with 3 more, where would that rank mock draft wise? Is 7 the goal here? 6, 8? What's a good number to hit here? Exact player to team matches. Pick number 1, Tennessee Titans, Cam Ward, quarterback. That's an easy one. Pick number 2, Cleveland Browns, Travis Hunter. That's another easy one. Pick number 3, New York Giants. The one quote that has stood out to me amid all of the noise, all of the steam, all of the difference of opinions, the smoke screens, the what have you, the whatnot, was if common sense prevails, the New York Giants will take Abdul Carter at number 3. There is speculation that they might be going to Sanders, but what that's been coupled with is Brian Daboll allegedly not being high on Sanders. I look at the Giants, it is Daboll in a do-or-die year. Last year, he was tightening up everything around him. Is he going to use this top pick on a guy that he is allegedly not high on? I don't think so. I think this is the Giants going Carter at 3. So we have Hunter, Carter, or Ward, Hunter, Carter, top 3. Number 4, this one came in a little bit of question over the weekend. I'm not buying any of the misdirection. Diana Rossini this morning saying that the Patriots are expected to go with Will Campbell. There is commentary from Mike Vrabel at the Combine, at the annual meetings, about how Will Campbell can fit in and be left tackle for the Pats. They view him as a left tackle. They're high on him. There were some comments on the Rich Eisen show about how the Patriots love Will Campbell. That love word seems a little bit excessive, but Will Campbell, left tackle, makes sense, fits in, matches for the Patriots at pick number 4. He's certainly going to be there. I don't think anything gets too crazy with Will Campbell at 4. So nothing groundbreaking at all. Ward, Hunter, Carter, Campbell, top 4. Brandon Shoemaker, you need 11 or 12 to be top of the board. Woo. 11 or 12 seems like a reach. Ryan Roberts, are you doing trades? I am not. The first ever mock draft I've ever done was last year. I didn't do trades. I'm not doing trades in this one either. I will say a trade in the top 5 would completely blow up any of the direction that I'm going here. Pick number 5. Here's my problem with pick number 5. This is where it kind of goes off the rails. For like 3 weeks, it was Mason Graham on the defensive line. And the reason that everybody got to the conclusion that Mason Graham was pick number 5 for the Jacksonville Jags was because James Gladstone, the new general manager, said several times at different meetings throughout the offseason that his goal is going to be building the trenches, offensive line and defensive line. When he was asked about the defensive line class at the draft a couple of weeks ago, he basically went out of his way to say that he is going to use multiple picks on defensive linemen. So in the last 3 days, there has been a ton of effort, I think mostly, or at least more than not, to make a case that there wasn't sufficient evidence for Mason Graham at 5. And I think there was just a need by some to try put together a mock draft and an order that was different. And everything that I have seen about, for the most part, the Jags not going with Mason Graham was that they were doing so because Mason Graham shouldn't be a top 5 prospect, and there's not enough buzz around him being a top 5 draft choice. And I think that's a little bit manufactured. And it's a little bit of a, I don't want to say reach, but I think it's just searching for something that's not what everybody else is saying. The one avenue that I have seen that would make me question things a little bit about whether or not the Jags follow up with what they have been saying the last couple of weeks, and even dating back into mid-February, is what I saw TA post yesterday on X, where he did a breakdown of new head coaches that come from the offensive side with a first-round pick in the top 15. It was like 90-something% of the time. I don't remember the sample. It was a long time. They go offense to match their need and style. So looking at it from that perspective, I can say, okay, I could see where the Jags go offense. The Schefter article on Monday had Ted McMillan. That price was slashed from 50 to 1 to 7 to 1. in the last 24 hours, it has been everything about Ashton Genty going to the Jags. I'm holding with what has been said several times by the GM and going pick number 5, Mason Graham, to the Jacksonville Jags. I think the defensive line is still a big position of need. And rather than going with some level of speculation on trying to be different, I'm saying here's what the GM has said a lot. Here's what the head coach has said a lot. I haven't seen either of them talk about wide receiver or running back in regards to Tet or Genty. In fact, I can point to 2 different press conferences where the Jags, either Cohen or Gladstone, have both said there's going to be running backs available in the 2nd and 3rd round, which they were intrigued by, talking about the depth of the running back class. And for wide receiver, the one quote for wide receivers that they mentioned at any of these interviews were about how deep the class was into day 2 and 3 as well. They referenced some of the top tier talent. Specifically, they didn't say McMillan or Golden by name, but those were the 2 guys that they kind of referenced as being higher up. So, I get that, but I think they see depth in this. So I'm sticking with Graham. Ryan Roberts says great opportunity for Jags to acquire more capital if someone really wants Genty. The trade up is absolutely in play. I think that's there. I will hold with the Jags going Mason Graham at number 5. Number 6, Raiders, Ashton Genty. Again, I've been saying it several times. It's probably a very square opinion. It's probably a very short-sighted opinion. I look at Pete Carroll at 75. I look at what the Raiders have done, picking up Geno Smith, what they did, signing Crosby. Everything about what they are doing to me signals this team needs to win now, and they want to win now, and this is not a longer-term rebuild. I have a hard time believing Pete Carroll, who had this incredibly entertaining combine press conference about how much he loves running the football, how important it is, how it sets up the entire team. I don't believe that he goes into the regular season passing on a guy like Ashton Genty, being comfortable with Raheem Mostert as running back number 1, Sincere McCormick running back number 2. I just don't buy it. I don't think that they pass on a guy like this. Everything that Spytech has said, the new GM, about how they want to look and how they want to appear on film, just matches everything that Genty is. Now, I have heard the counterpoint that Chip Kelly, with the ties to the Ohio State running backs, those guys being available on day 2, the Raiders picking high up in round 2, there's going to be opportunities on day 2. I think that's a very valid counterpoint, a very valid, on the other hand, viewpoint for this. I'm buying into Pete Carroll and what he's always been, and the fact that the Raiders are in a division from hell, and a guy like Genty could give them an opportunity to be a little bit more competitive than if they were to go the direction of an offensive lineman and focus on a bit of a longer-term future. It's not like the Raiders' offensive line was that bad to begin with. So that is where I'm looking. Raiders at number 6. Jets at number 7. We're sticking square and going Armand Membu, number 7, right tackle. Aaron Glenn has said, I think in a very refreshing way, that his goal of the offseason is to have a low-profile offseason, and all of that is by design. I heard yesterday from a bettor, there's a chance, it wasn't like advocating for it, but he was like, well, what if Shedeur Sanders is available? Did the Jets take him with Justin Fields, a quarterback? It's not crazy, but I think that would go against what Aaron Glenn has wanted this offseason to be. I don't think Glenn goes with the flash at number 7, bringing in a guy like Sanders after how he handled the Rodgers scenario and what he said about how he wants the offseason to be. The reason I say Membu at right tackle makes sense is because the Jets desperately need, and I mean desperately in capital letters with a few underscores, need a right tackle. And this would shore things up for kind of any direction that they want to go with the offense. Membu's a day 1 starter. Is there a chance that Banks sneaks up? Sure. There's probably discussion about Tyler Warren being available. Same thing was said last year. The Jets still want offensive line because they need so much help. There's also, from the Schefter article, commentary that they would go Jahdae Barron at number 7. Again, this this entire mock is based off of what has really been said for a long time and what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing from coaches and GMs and reporters, and not necessarily buying into a lot of the hype. Man, if they're going to pay for a guy who had so many comments about being in the 20s and 30s and sliding because he plays so much nickel at 7, that just doesn't seem like what Aaron Glenn does either. So to me, Membu, if he's here, makes sense. The most likely change that I would say here is if Mason Graham does slide, I do not think he gets past the Jets at 7. If the Jags go a different direction, or there's a trade, or 5, 6 get kind of muddled up, which is certainly possible, the Jets would, I think, have Graham rated higher than Membu internally, and then they would go that direction. I don't think Graham gets past 7 at the Jets if he doesn't go 5 Jags. So that would be kind of the most obvious to me difference in scenario. Carolina at number 8. This is where things kind of start to get muddy. So not a lot of conviction on the player, but I have a lot of conviction that they're going to go defense and edge rusher. Now, where this gets a little bit muddy is, do they go Walker? Do they go Williams? I'm going to put, how do I even search in this thing as I'm looking through the draft board? I'm going to go Jalen Walker at number 8 to the Carolina Panthers. I can make the case for Mykel Williams, who I think is a top 10 guy, who I have going number 9 to the New Orleans Saints. A lot of ties to how he compares to Cam Jordan, how he could potentially be in a position where he's learning from Cam Jordan and is becoming the replacement and fits in with the Saints, who I think are going defensive line as well, and edge rusher. So Mykel Williams. Now, something to remember, Jalen Walker, a linebacker officially in betting. So whether you're going D-line, edge versus linebacker for position, I have a lot of conviction that we will see both of these teams address the edge rusher positions. Walker, linebacker, Williams, edge rusher. I think they go 8 and 9. But keep in mind, if you're looking at betting either of these, you have to have that positional difference between the two. Chicago Bears at number 10. I will go on the offensive line, and I will go with Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas to continue adding depth to the offensive line for the Chicago Bears. It has been a priority all offseason. I think the 3 signings have changed the opinion of how the Bears might approach the draft and what they might look at. I think Ben Johnson, looking to the future, is in a different scenario than, say, a Pete Carroll in Las Vegas, where he is also in a very competitive division, but I see him building the offense the way that he wants it, and adding offensive line stability is a great direction to go, considering some of the skill guys that you can still look at on day 2 or 3 to potentially add in there for Chicago. The stock on Kelvin Banks has been rising the last couple of weeks. He is actually being viewed as tackle number 2 in some cases, ahead of Membu. I think with some of the injury concerns that the Bears have had at tackle the last couple of years, we could see them continue to push and add Banks to just fortify that offensive line even further, to represent a similar build to what we saw the Lions do, which took a couple of years to get right. But boy, when it was right, it was pretty damn good. So I think the Bears go Banks at 10. I'm deviating. I'm deviating for one pick, because if this comes true, I want at least a few YouTube comments to say, like, this is my one, like, draft take and draft stance that I'm going to go out of line with for the 32 here. San Francisco at 11. I really want this to happen. And I will say there's some precedence for this, because we are seeing Kyle Shanahan, the way that they operated in the free agency window and the reset, they are, to me, very clearly trying to shift their offense into something that is very different. They are looking to go with more 12 personnel. They are looking to go with more looks that can match up against man coverage. They saw more man coverage last year than any other season for Kyle Shanahan as a coach at San Francisco or a coordinator at Atlanta. He has typically just absolutely killed either or in the coverage whether he's getting a lot of zone or a lot of man, he's had answers. He hasn't had answers for man in the last year and a bit with San Francisco. The Chiefs beat him with it in the Super Bowl. Last year, teams were just piling on because one or two injuries completely shifts what the Niners are able to do. A guy like Tyler Warren, who, if he falls to 11, is going to be the best player available, I think, on most boards, gives them some serious matchup advantages if he's opposite of Kittle, with Jennings outside, with Ayuk eventually coming back. The biggest problem on offense for Kyle Shanahan to solve is really solved matchup-wise, schematically, with Tyler Warren. Now, look, offensive line issues all over the place for San Francisco. Defensive line issues all over the place for San Francisco. You have Robert Saleh coming in, returning back to San Francisco. He's going to want guys to fit his scheme as they adjust back to what they used to be during the time that Saleh was there in the Super Bowl run that they made. However, I think if there's a team we're going to see reach in this scenario, I wouldn't put San Francisco out of line. That is, again, going to be something that's probably not said elsewhere. I'm just looking at what Shanahan is doing scheme-wise. I'm looking at the direction this offense needs to go. I think Warren is a really good fit. So you need it. You need a defensive tackle. You need offensive linemen. That makes a lot of sense. I think Warren has a chance to go 11. And if he does, I want YouTube comments. But if he doesn't, you can laugh at me for having Warren going 11 to the San Francisco 49ers. Next up, Dallas Cowboys wide receiver. They very often draft with guys they visit with. Golden had the visit with them. We saw yesterday Jane Slater was talking about guys who were high, and she was hearing buzz about. Golden was one of those guys that was named along with defensive linemen, but Golden at 12 makes sense where some of those defensive linemen did not. So I think the Cowboys go with Matthew Golden, wide receiver, pick number 12. Going to 13. This is a bit of a tough one for me because to me, the Dolphins are going to be between offensive line with Teron Armstead departing and cornerback with the trade rumors that we are seeing swirling around Jalen Ramsey. So I kind of put myself in a position to pick between the two because I had Banks going 10 to the Bears. I'll go with Will Johnson here to the Dolphins. I don't love this. It's a very clear need. It makes a lot of sense for them to fill that need. Could they go offensive lineman? Still, absolutely. I think it's between the two positions for the Dolphins at 13. Getting a few, I got a puke emoji from the big unit. I don't know which pick that was for specifically. Ryan Roberts saying Pierce isn't going anywhere near 11. The big unit was looking for Pierce Jr. at edge to go 11 to the Niners. Josh is saying Niners have been itching for another tight end. However, need a DT playmaker badly. However, if Warren is there, they have to grab him. Okay, so some disagreements, but some agreement. So that makes sense. Pick 14. You guys know where I'm going with this one. It was said yesterday a couple times. Some strong commentary again. Shane Steichen, I mean, I feel bad for the guy. Someone needs to get this guy a tight end. He's trying so hard in press conferences and interviews to hide just how much he wants to have a tight end. He's trying so hard to do it, but he just can't help himself at this point. There's like 4 different interviews with Shane Steichen where he talks about wanting a pass-catching tight end. The caveat to this, you're going to have some veterans available. So maybe it's a trade. If Loveland is there at 14, you talk about pass-catching tight ends that he desperately wants. I mean, Loveland at 14 makes all the sense in the world, matching commentary to need to fit for the Colts at pick 14. Okay, so similar to 8 and 9 with Williams and Walker, there is a trio of teams at 15, 16, and 17, specifically 15 with Atlanta and 17 with Cincinnati, where high conviction defensive line edge, low conviction player. So the order that I have gone for these is number 15 for the Atlanta Falcons. I have gone with, pardon me, as I kind of jump through the menus here. I've gone with Mike Green going 15 to the Atlanta Falcons, with Shamar Stewart going 17 to the Cincinnati Bengals, and then 16 defensive tackle going with Walter Nolan. So I'm clicking through these to put everybody up. Everybody on these live streams that I have been watching has made these look a lot easier than I have. Now, as I'm looking at this, like Green could, I think, easily go 17. Stewart could easily go 15. Nolan could be viewed as the best defensive lineman available and could go either direction as well. Atlanta, I'll just kind of give like thoughts and precedents here for what's going on. So Mike Green, edge from Marshall for Atlanta. The Falcons initially, according to Orlando Ledbetter, did not send any offensive personnel to the draft. That's kind of been disproven from some sources saying that there were offensive guys there. But we've heard coach and GM for Atlanta say the goal, like last year where their goal was to get a quarterback, their goal this year is to increase and improve their pass rush. So I think everything for Atlanta is pointing to pass rush. For Cincinnati, bringing in Al Golden, everything about what the Bengals are doing is providing youth to Golden to develop on the defensive side of the football, with Trey Hendrickson very much in flux for what he might be, whether he's on the team or not. That's still uncertain. I think the direction for Cincinnati is very clear. To me, the Cardinals, even with the signing of Sweat, they are still a pass rusher away. So I could see them going that direction as well. GK Pro Bet says Stewart isn't being picked by the Bengals. Bengals met with Nolan several times. I could switch either of these either way. And so it's probably not going to grade as a match. I think these three teams go defensive line. I have much higher conviction on that than players and how you want to match these three up. I think this is the range where they go. I think this is the way that they look. So GK, if you want to put Nolan at 17 to the Bengals, I think that could be a fit as well. I don't know which order these three guys go. I think all three of these teams go defense and defensive line, and that is where these guys go. So maybe we'll do an amendment at the end, but that's how I'm looking at these three. We get to 18 with Seattle. It does seem like they have a chance to take a quarterback later. I don't think they reach for either quarterback. John Schneider on local media has kind of gone out of his way to mention, like, oddly, quarterbacks a couple times. Would they ever go Sanders at 18? I don't know. I think it's more of a day 2 or 3 QB scenario for Seattle. The most pressing need that they have up front is on the interior of the offensive line. A guy like Gray Zabel could match and fit some of the issues, whether it be at center or on the interior. I think that's the direction that we see the Zabel end up going. Pick 18, filling a need for the Seahawks at 18. Pick 19, there was a ton of consensus on Jahad Campbell early on in the draft process. Todd Bowles multiple times saying he wants a guy who is a ball hawk, who is aggressive, who gets after the football. Campbell certainly fits that need, fits a very Todd Bowles style of defense, fits what he wants. That is a fit at 19 for Tampa Bay with Jahad Campbell, matching up with what was said very often throughout February and throughout March. He does have the labrum injury. There was a video that I think was forced out by an agent yesterday of him running. I think Campbell at 19 still is the fit and still is the play for Todd Bowles in that defense. Pick number 20 for the Denver Broncos, as I take a sip of coffee. Ted McMillan going 20. Best, I think, offensive player available on the board at that point. Sean Payton goes and adds another weapon. I know Marion Hampton is very popular, mocked 20 to the Denver Broncos. With the number of running backs that could be available day 2, I think the Broncos can elect to handle this differently, where they're put to the position where do they maybe reach a little bit for a running back that might not be exactly what Payton wants. Sounded like Henderson perhaps was a bit of a better fit for his offense than what Hampton could deliver. And they're going to be looking at Ted McMillan, who probably this week with a lot of the buzz is viewed as falling and sliding. And that might be a bit too much for a guy like Sean Payton to pass up, adding another good wide receiver to go with Bo Nix, who broke out last year in that very, very competitive division with some very good defenses in there as well. Pick number 21, Shedeur Sanders at quarterback, going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They talked about how they want to go into camp with 4 quarterbacks. Right now they have 2. Mason Rudolph as the starter seems like a stretch to me. We have seen Mike Tomlin talk a couple of times about how much he likes Sanders. There was a comment from Sanders where he was mentioning elite duos in the NFL, and he referenced whoever is going to be throwing the football to Pickens and Metcalf, and kind of said it as a joke where he was laughing a little bit, perhaps referencing to himself as being that option to be throwing to both of those guys. You see a quarterback like Sanders being added. Maybe the Steelers add another veteran. I don't know if there's 2 vets out there that make sense for them to add. So I think Sanders at 21 to Pittsburgh is the direction that they go. Pick number 22, Kenneth Grant going to the LA Chargers, filling the interior defensive line. I've seen some very high scouting reports on him. There is the Harbaugh-Michigan connection, which has been talked about as being very real and not just an exaggerated narrative. No, they have Teair Tart in the middle of that defensive line. Teair Tart is quite an underrated defensive tackle, but he also comes with a lot of character and fitness and playing concerns that kind of plagued him throughout his time with Tennessee and then recently as well. And so a guy like Grant filling in for the Chargers with a bevy of wide receivers and skill guys still available on day 2 or 3, I think it's going to be hard for them to get by and pass up. Pick number 23, Green Bay Packers, Donovan Ezeraku. I will always kind of be a sucker for any strong combine interviews with ties from a guy to a team. There is the Jeff Hafley tie to Boston College, and Ezeraku at the combine. If you find the interview and watch it, he was kind of very transparent and maybe more so than he intended to be about how he's already met with the Packers, how he already could see himself playing for the Packers with the connection between him and the defensive style and the DC. There was kind of a lot given away there. So he's probably maybe not viewed as pick number 23 by a handful of teams, but I think that connection is pretty real, and the Packers certainly need some help on the defensive line as well. So Ezeraku from Boston College going 23 to the Green Bay Packers. Pick number 24 for the Minnesota Vikings. Might have to scroll down a little bit for this one. We're still scrolling. We'll go by position. We'll go down to safety. And we will go with Nick Manwari going 24 from South Carolina to the Minnesota Vikings. I think the Vikings do look to add at safety, but specifically trying to boost the free safety position. Manwari compared to Starks has been something in the betting market that has been very one-sided. Both opened up with the same positional total. Manwari's been bet up. Starks has been bet down. So have Manwari going here, safety number 24 to the Minnesota Vikings. Pick number 25 goes back to a comment I'm struggling to ignore. Houston Texans taking Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver from Ohio State. Everywhere has Houston going offensive line because Laramie Tunsil was traded to Washington. There was a comment during the conference call back in February where Egbuka was labeled as a slam dunk pick and fit for the Houston Texans. And I think about this Texans depth chart that is now surrounding C.J. Stroud. There's not a lot of weapons that you can confidently rely on here for Stroud to throw to. Like, I get that the offensive line is troubling, but the offensive line has been troubling since they drafted Stroud, and they really haven't gone out of their way to do a whole lot to add to it and protect him. Tank Dell is going to start, obviously, on the injury report. His status, whether or not he's even able to play this season, is still very much in jeopardy. We know that Stephon Diggs was traded. Does Christian Kirk playing opposite of Nico Collins automatically just solve all of the issues that Houston has at playmaker? I don't think so. I think Christian Kirk provides a very interesting wide receiver number 2 out of the slot because he's so good at beating man coverage. Nico Collins murders zone coverage. And anyone who bets props knows you get that zone team like a Colts in the division. You're betting those Nico Collins overs. You get the man coverage teams. Nico Collins drops off a little bit. He doesn't drop off to like a league average wide receiver. But now Houston has that option with Kirk against those man teams. Christian Kirk, incredibly underrated against man coverage. You had a guy like Igbuka in there as wide receiver number 3. That all of a sudden makes this offense a lot more of a threat. And don't get me wrong, like I get the offensive line concerns, but my goodness, they have to give Stroud someone to throw to. Is one offensive lineman at this point in the draft, maybe it's Simmons, maybe it's a reach. It's not going to solve the problems that they have. But if you add Igbuka in there, it elevates the floor of the offense. So his positional total at 29.5 has been bet down consistently. A lot of the scouting reports suggest that he could be a day 2 guy. And so this is going a little bit with the market, but probably overpricing him relative to how he's being viewed scouting report wise. But I think the Texans still go wide receiver at this position. Pick number 26. We'll go with Trey Amos from Ole Miss going to the LA Rams. Filling a need at corner. There was I think it was McShay's draft had Barron going here at 26, and that was one I just with Barron and how much he plays nickel. I don't know if that's necessarily going to make a ton of sense here. So I went Amos. A lot of first round buzz on him. There was a comment where the stopping point for him from Daniel Jeremiah was 30. Thinks the door opens up for Amos at 21. He was pretty adamant that both Ole Miss guys in the first round end up going. The other one we already had going Walter Nolan 16. There's some talk in the chatter about him going 17. So Trey Amos, cornerback, pick number 26. Number 27, Malachi Starks going to the Baltimore Ravens. Great character, positional fit for them to add into that defense. A lot of commentary about how he's labeled as just being prototypical Raven. Character-wise, everybody loves him in the scouting reports, was very high on him, but his draft position has been being bet down. So we're seeing Starks fall 227 going to the Baltimore Ravens as a good fit. Ryan Roberts says Starks and Hamilton would be so much fun. I certainly agree with you there. Pick number 28. This is where things get muddy and a little bit reachy. James Pierce Jr., edge rusher, to go opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, going to the Detroit Lions. I think there's a couple different ways that they could go with that, but defensive line perhaps makes sense. Could see some flyers maybe on wide receiver for the Lions being taken. I'm looking edge rusher there, Pierce, fitting there. I hope Birdie is watching because I'm with you on this one. It's something that we've been talking about on the live stream for a little while. Marion Hampton going 29 to the Washington Commanders. Now, there's talk about Henderson and how he fits with Hampton going 20, but I can't ignore some of those comments about Washington running back, getting the 3 down back. Hampton fits in there, makes some sense. So Hampton at 29 being there is something that I think you can look at. It's very much a reach, longer odds that you can look at as well. But there's been commentary here on the live chat throughout the last couple of weeks about some comments coming from around the team about running backs and their value. If Hampton ends up falling to 29, I think Washington could look at that as potentially being valuable. Pick number 30 with the Buffalo Bills. Some suspensions that they have to deal with to Ogunjobi and some depth pieces on the defensive line. They have to really desperately find ways to get off the field. We heard Sean McDermott talking about how it's a priority, how they need to find guys who can help them on those third down situations to get off of the field, to get stops. It was something that hampered them last season, something they've desperately tried to fill. I think in this scenario, they go Derek Harmon, pick number 30, to try find a defensive lineman to shore things up both against the run, but also try give them some support on that D-line for some of the suspensions that they now have to deal with holes that they tried to fill. Kansas City Chiefs, this could go a lot of different ways. I will say from the coaching staff perspective, what we heard from Andy Reid, what we heard from Brett Veach, they had a couple unprovoked responses where they were looking at defense being the depth of this class, talking about drafting for the defensive line. Everyone that I've seen recently, except for Matt Verderam that covers the team, has just been going offensive lineman, offensive tackle, fill the need. And that's been kind of the overwhelming thought. The Chiefs have tried to fill a need at offensive line through the draft unsuccessfully like 5 or 6 times in recent history. And it just hasn't worked. So do they go a different direction this draft? Do you trust what they said, defensive line, edge rusher? To me, that makes a lot more sense than just blindly filling a need, especially with the way some of these prices have gone up. And so, like, I'm not trying to downplay what the need is, but if you get to this position, are they really going to try to fill that need with a guy like Simmons who has some injury concerns? Are they going to reach a little bit on Connerly? Like, I don't know if there's just the answer here that's a guarantee, similar to Houston, that, yeah, I get that the need is there and it's wide open, but do any of these guys fill it and just give the answer at that position? I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I'll go. I said I had one reach with San Francisco going with Warren. I'll reach here and say that the Chiefs go Henderson at 31. And they add a running back as a versatile option out of the backfield to add on weapons to that offense. That's my reach number 2. They had a virtual visit with him today, doing a little bit more due diligence on him, or perhaps wrapping up some final questions as an option. I think back to the 2020 COVID draft and how they handled that. I think back to last year and how they handled that. Adding speed, adding weapons. CEH was certainly viewed as a reach. He was priced at very long odds. Perhaps that's a repeat in this scenario as well. And then pick 32. There is a lot of precedents for this coming up recently. Mason Taylor, tight end, going number 32 to the Philadelphia Eagles. Dallas Goedert's future in question with the team. And there was a video with Daniel Jeremiah yesterday, which was quite interesting. There was speculation that it was Howie Roseman that he was talking to as the unidentified personnel member, and was kind of telegraphing a little bit for the Eagles' interest in Mason Taylor. There's also on his most recent conference call talk about Mason Taylor being a guy who's going to go in the first round. He's certainly a fit for the Eagles. Now, you can't ignore some of the veteran tight ends that are out there as well, but Mason Taylor's first-round price, as we were on the live stream last Friday, was 5-1. It's currently even money. So he has taken a number of bets to drive that price down with him going in the first round. Where does he fit? Where does he end up going? I think in this scenario, tight end going 32 to the Philadelphia Eagles with some of the commentary certainly stands out and makes some sense to me at that position as well. So a bit of longer odds still available there for the Eagles to go with a tight end, but Mason Taylor from LSU, tight end number 3 in the first round of this mock. So here we are. Here we have it. 43 minutes for a mock draft. Not too bad. What I will put out to the chat. Do you agree with most? What do you disagree with most? The big disagreement that I saw happening was Green, Nolan, Stewart. And so if I was to look at this now, again, kind of tough to do it live and keep a train of thought and reply to comments and keep going with everything. But I think you're right that you could, like, Nolan at 17 maybe makes a bit more sense than 16, or Green going after Stewart, or whichever order you want to have those in. I think I'd maybe make an amendment there. Ryan Roberts says Barron not going round 1 got to be the biggest disagreement. That's fair. I don't buy at all Schefter's article with him going 7 to the Jets. 18.5. I know as well, Silva had him going 5 to the Jags in his mock round 1. And So yeah, probably leaving him out. Maybe I don't think he makes sense at 26 with what the Rams have. Everything that I saw about Barron was that he was going in the 20s prior to Silva's mock and then the Schefter article, which I just a ton of respect for both of those guys. Obviously, I don't think either of those were like rooted in like guaranteed intel. I could be way off and wrong on that, but I I don't see that making a lot of sense at 5 or 7 personally. And I just kind of buy into all the stuff about Barron being a guy that goes in the 20s. But where does he go in the 20s? I think is a fair question. So perhaps that is, I could be a reach on that, certainly from my part, with him not going. But this is just, I don't know where he ends up fitting in and where he ends up fitting. Ryan McGee says over 2.5 quarterbacks in round 1. I think the answer is 2, personally. Scott, the only reason that Scott says, I think Barron makes perfect sense for the Dolphins, especially with Ramsey on his way out. My only disagreement with that is Barron is not a standalone outside corner. So I don't agree that that's a fit. The knock on Barron is that he plays so much nickel corner. That's the reason that he's sliding down the board, similar to what happened with Cooper DeJean last year. DeJean had some very, very good late workouts coming off the injury, and he still slid. I get that Barron doesn't have those injury concerns, but I don't agree that he's a fit in that. I think we see him devalued because he plays so much nickel, and I don't think that he's a Ramsey replacement personally. Any Milroe comments with the invitation to the draft? Haven't heard any talk of him since that. I don't. I don't think, based on a lot of the film guys and analysts that I look at and I respect, I don't see him as being a day one quarterback. I think that's a big reach. Brian says, is that just 4 offensive linemen in round 1? Campbell, Membu, Banks, Zabel is 4. It is. Which, as you say that, it sounds low to me. I saw on the Ross Tucker pod, he's got the over. He said it was entertainment. He obviously played the position. I've seen comments about how tackles are going to be at a premium. I've seen comments about how the O-line early is going to be at a premium. So what I will say, Brian, as I look at this, so there's 4. How do you get to 7? The way that you would get to 7 is kind of just disagreeing with some of these picks I think I will be viewed at as reaching. 1 would be Houston, who I had going wide receiver, O-lineman. 2 would be the Chiefs, who I have going Henderson, who's obviously a reach over an offensive lineman. So that gets you to 6. Then you have like a lot of these fringe teams, which would be O-line candidates like Miami, like San Francisco, like those are probably the other ones that I would say are like obvious and clear reaches or obvious and clear fits. So could you get to 7 or 8, flipping out a couple of these? Yes. Like conviction level that I have for Texans going wide receiver, it's like 2 out of 10. Conviction level I have Chiefs going running back, it's probably 1 or 2 out of 10. So you could flip those very easily. Miami is a coin flip, corner or offensive line. San Francisco going Warren, again, that was the one I said, like, this is a big reach. They're a favorite to go offensive line. So could you get to 7? Absolutely. So I wouldn't look at this as saying like this is 4 and it's a guarantee. The reason it's 4 and not 7 is because in like the 3 spots that I really deviated from what would make a lot of sense and what has been said, I flipped O-line into something else. Pierce Jr. -160 to go round 1, a good bet. Character concerns, Ryan would probably, I would say, make that priced fair at -160. That's a very kind of tough one to make. He's certainly a late round 1 guy, I think. Ryan Roberts, Simmons and Booker. Not sure who else. Baltimore, maybe. I would say as I go through this and I think back, omitting Booker is a mistake on my part. And there was a lot of commentary about him going round 1. So you could fit Booker in here, certainly in round 1. But yes, I think he goes first overall. Cadillac John says 82 in the chat here. Remember the thumbs up. Well, I'd appreciate it very much. I hope this was entertaining. Again, not a mock drafter by trade in any means, not a draft analyst by trade in any means. This is just April NFL content, handicapping the draft, going forward with things, and trying to make the best show possible to give you as much to think about as possible as well, and to represent the casual nature of the show that I'm trying to provide here on April 23rd. We're going to get Saskatchewan Roughrider CFL hoodie instead of the traditional dress-up Lululemon hoodie or traditional polo that I tend to sport on the live stream. So just puts that in perspective. If you're looking at the mock one more time, we'll pull it up, and you're running the bet, anything crazy, take a few flyers, make it for fun, have some long shots, have something to think about. If there was something I said you really agree with and you hear it differently, I would encourage you, do a couple searches. Like you can go back and search any of this stuff to find out if it's true. You can rewatch the interviews. I sent out a newsletter yesterday with some links to videos. Just watch it and look at it and see what you think about it. And if it makes sense, you go on and bet it. Cadillac John says low limits anyway, but love the content. I appreciate it very much. For those watching that maybe aren't impacted by limits, limits are low typically mean very big edges. So keep that in mind if you are betting and finding it. But I would encourage you guys, if you hear something, whether it's comments like Amos or Ezeraku with the Combine interview, the Harbaugh Michigan stuff with Grant going 22, Tomlin and Sanders, Jahad Campbell and the Todd Bowles defense in that match, the Jeremiah interview where he was represented as like kind of trying to hide the scout, which everyone speculates was Roseman, with Mason Taylor, tight end. Like all of these things can be looked up and searched. Watch it, take a look at it, and just be like, do you believe it or not before you go and run and make any bets based off of this stuff? Because that's how I put all of this together, and that's how my thoughts go for each of these teams. The two obvious omissions would be Barron as well as Booker, as mentioned in the chat. So keep those two in mind as you're looking at this too, on where they might end up. So that will do it for me today. I hope everybody has a fantastic Wednesday. We will be back tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to recap all of the expert mocks that go out today. We're seeing a couple of them leak out already. There'll be more coming later on in the day. I'll put everything together. I'll have everything put up, and that's what we'll talk about tomorrow on the show to wrap up NFL draft betting for 2025. Friday's show will be a full reaction to everything that happens tomorrow night on day one of the NFL draft. If you're betting on the NHL or NBA playoffs, Bet 105 has minus 105 sides and totals. Cadillac John, your prime candidate for Bet 105. High limits, they don't restrict play, they don't limit winners, and they don't kick you out. There's a link down in the description if you want to hop over to check out what Bet 105 has to offer. Highly recommend it for anybody. And of course, footballbettors.com, free email newsletter to keep you up to date with everything going on in the NFL for the draft and beyond. Have a fantastic Wednesday, everybody. We'll chat to each and every one of you again tomorrow at the same time.